Good evening, everyone, both in person and to everybody who's connecting from home. My name is Emmanuel Fiano. I'm the co-director of the Center for Jewish Studies here at Fordham, along with Professor Magda Tater. Welcome to this talk by Dr. Leor Jacobi in our Fordham-NYPL lecture series in Jewish Studies. Dr. Jacobi, who is a Fordham-NYPL lecturer, is a researcher of medieval art and rabbinic literature who teaches at Bar-Ilan University, where he serves as an editor of the Department of Jewish Arts academic journal, Ars Judaica. He has published and lectured widely around the world on the topic of medieval falconry and maintains a focus on Jewish bookbinding craft in medieval Catalonia and Hebrew manuscript fragments extracted from these bindings. Leor was previously awarded Postdoctoral Fellowships by Humboldt Stiftung and the Memorial Foundation for Jewish Culture, and currently his research is supported by the American Philosophical Society. Dr. Jacobi will be talking to us today about From Catalonia to Yemen, Hebrew manuscript fragments, and Jewish bookbindings in the NYPL and around the world. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Jacobi.
Wow. Okay. Excuse me. Thank you, Emmanuel, for a nice introduction. Also, thank you, Magda, for hosting me. Very much appreciated. And I also have to thank Mila and Kyle from the New York Public Library, who helped me very much in locating the Hebrew manuscript fragments in the New York Public Library collection. So let's get going. Let's see. So they asked that I speak a little bit of myself and also to try to introduce the topic so that everyone can follow. So we're talking about book bindings, and fragments that are inside the book bindings are used to support the book bindings. So what's a book, first of all? In Hebrew, it's Sefer, yeah. And the original books, don't want to get into the ancient world with clay tablets and things like that, but we have the scrolls. So here I am in Germany, in Mainz, in the Martinus Bibliothek with some, can I go back? Yeah, with some scrolls of the Book of Esther, which is coincidentally, hint hint, coming up Purim holiday in just next week. Yeah. Okay, but how's it work? Sorry, technical issues. Okay, so scrolls are the earliest forms of books, but they're not the form that we're familiar with, and we're not going to really dealing with them. We're going to be dealing with the codex, the book like you have with the pages that you flip through. So the earliest forms of codex are quite a bit different than the books we have today, in almost every way in terms of materials. The pages were generally made of parchment, not made of paper. And the bindings which surrounded them were very often made of wood, solid wood, often covered with a thick leather cover to resemble a hardcover book, but really made of entirely different materials. Now, the development of paper in who knows exactly where, but in the Far East, possibly made from rags and old clothing and materials, really made a big impact in the Islamic world. Yeah, it moved in the late antique, early medieval period, and eventually made its way into Europe especially through Spain. So how are these books made? Here's a illustration. We don't have so much, we don't have videos of the ancient world, but this is a relatively early illustration, 17th or 18th century India, of a bookbinder at work with his tools, fashioning the bindings. So we are going to focus on this Islamic type of book made of paper. And I developed this saying, Islamic books in Christian Iberia are Jewish. What does that mean? Islamic books, I mean the type of book that's made of paper. It looks like this. It often has a flap, yeah, which we don't have so much nowadays, yeah. So the spine of the book, where our spine is located, is typically just has a piece of cloth, and then the leather is so that it can be open and shut easily. And the flap that covers it on the other side has a harder spine. Now, instead of wood, the hardcover, which resembles our hardcover books today, our hardcover books, there's a piece of cardboard inside the front and back cover. So they didn't have cardboard factories in the medieval period. So what they did is they took old, worn out manuscripts, old, worn out pieces of paper, and they would glue them together, yeah, 5, 10, 15 pieces, glue them together, and make pieces of cardboard. Then those would be, instead of the wood, which they previously used, this is a much cheaper way to reuse it's a type of recycling, if you will, yeah, reuse. And so wherever they began making books from paper, they also began using the paper, the old worn out paper, for the paper boards. Now, so this is a rich source of medieval manuscript fragments are found in this paperboard. Now, one of the places where I've focused my research is in Girona, which is in Catalonia, in the archives of Girona. There was a great Jewish community in Barcelona and Girona, and they have tens, hundreds of thousands of notary books, archival books in their archives, dealing with all kinds, mostly economic registers of all kinds of different things for their feudal society. And for our purposes, they're filled with these paperboard bindings, and they have many original bindings there. They've been sitting on the shelves for hundreds of years. They're beginning to fall apart. And you can look in there and you can see all kinds of manuscripts in Latin, Catalan mostly, but also Hebrew. Here are some of the little Hebrew fragments which I've found personally looking through the archival books in Girona. Get a peek inside the binding and see a little Hebrew text. Here's another one, and here's a real special one that it has. This is a manuscript of the Babylonian Talmud, and there's it's like complete pages. Usually they're cut into all kinds of shapes and sizes, anything you could imagine. You get a whole full pages. This is a real find. I got into this study first with Talmud commentary. I published as in my master's thesis. This is an example of a page from the Talmud commentary in Girona, and a hole in there. And you can say, and don't worry, we were able to reconstruct almost all the texts inside that hole. Now, how did I get into this? So these guys are learning Talmud, yeah, in a yeshiva, in a kollel, right? And I used to be one of these guys, or maybe I still am one of these guys, depending on who you ask. And so what's going on there? So there's a little bit of a misnomer, a little bit, that they're studying the Talmud. Now, it's true, they are studying the Talmud and arguing about the Talmud. But what's going on more often than not is that they're learning Talmud commentaries. So the medieval Catalonia is a major center, a major rabbinic center. There's what we call in Hebrew the Beit Midrash of the Ramban, Nachmanides and his students. So we're talking about that. What's special about Catalonia, you have everything from Spain, from Sefarad, Maimonides and those schools of the Islamic world, and everything from France in the north, everything's coming together during the medieval period. And the sages of Catalonia are creating a ferment between all of these opinions. And so we have really a tremendous amount of Talmudic commentaries composed in this period. So here I have many of the sages listed here. Nachmanides, Rashba is a very famous sage. The Ran, Rav Nisim, Rabbeinu Yonah of Gerona was a great pietist. And they're all in this area. And that's exactly this area, Gerona, Barcelona, where we have the manuscripts inside the book bindings. So we have a source which is very close to the sages, both geographically and temporally. So a lot of work has been done, has been focused on Gerona. There's a doctoral thesis by a Catalonian scholar, my colleague Esperanza Valls. She's focused more on the Catalan material, and I've focused more on the rabbinic literature. Recently, I published an article summarizing all the publications of rabbinic literature from Gerona, from the book bindings. And then more recently, I began to focus on the book bindings themselves, not just the manuscripts inside. Why? Because Jews, I'll show you an example first. Here's an example of a book binding with embossed designs on the cover. This is for a notarial book. It was created for a Christian notary by a Jewish bookbinder. And the thing is that the trade, the production of paper, of books that were produced on paper, the Islamic type of book, was in Christian Iberia, which Catalonia is, was something that was almost completely dominated by Jews. So Jews were making the books, they were binding the books, they were creating, they were doing all of this themselves. And they were putting the old manuscripts inside of the bindings themselves. So this is an example of a book which is in the Municipal Archive of Gerona. And they didn't know that they had any books with these designs, they had no idea. And in fact, you can barely see it when you hold the book. If I have to hold it up to the light and jiggle it around until you see it, because hundreds of years of pressure and friction have worn it down. But when you shine a light from the side in a dark room, voila, everything comes to light, and you can imagine what it used to be. Now, it would have had a flap originally, but so this is what I'm working on more recently, and hopefully, and there's publications in the pipeline. I also began putting together the Jewish bookbinders and the actual books on the shelves. So here on the top, we have a record, an archive record of a purchase of a book from a Jew of Gerona. It says Joël Gironde. And here's the book. Here's the book which is being ordered, putting these together. So this binding was created by a Jew, but the drawing was probably made by the Christian notary. It's the symbol of the city of Gerona. I put together lists of all these records of documenting the Jewish bookbinders that were active in Gerona. Now I'd like to shift gears, get to the New York Public Library, where we also have manuscripts inside the bindings. And New York Public Library has a tremendous collection of thousands and thousands of books. Now this phenomenon of putting manuscripts in bindings is not just medieval. It continued on into the age of printing, into the early modern period. And in fact, at the beginning, in the early modern period, we find a lot of manuscripts inside the bindings that were bound on printed books. Okay, so we have here. So here's what we have so far in the New York Public Library collection, which I'll be discussing today. There's fragments from a Yom Kippur Machzor of the Roman Rite, Machzor Romi, late medieval, early modern medical manual, a medical manual written in Hebrew, completely secular, it's just science, a scientific book, scientific work, Yemenite Bible, unvocalized, that means with no vowels, no vowel signs, and a new find that I found since I came, which is a fragment of a Yemenite Bible with an Aramaic Targum, the Aramaic translation, together with it. A verse of Bible, a verse of translation, a verse of Bible, a verse of translation. Now, before I get into it, coincidentally, I have to make a little it's between all these manuscripts I just described, there's one scholar that has a hand in every one of them, pretty much, and that's Shadal, Shmuel David Luzzatto. He was a great Italian rabbi of the 19th century. He composed an introduction to the Roman Rite, the Machzor, which was the first manuscript. He was a great bibliographer. He cataloged numerous Hebrew collections of Hebrew manuscripts, also for other Italian collectors. And he was the first scholar to identify the source of the Babylonian vocalization system, which is different than the system which we're familiar with, which is called the Tiberian system, and we'll discuss that later. So anyway, Shadal has a hand in all of these, so I'll mention him. Also, my next speaking gig is at a Shadal conference, so I have to get warmed up. Okay. So the first manuscript is found in a printed book. This is the only one I'll discuss today that's found on a printed book called Index Librorum Prohibitorum. This is an interesting book. The original book it's printed in this Piacenza, in northern Italy, 1568. This book is a list of prohibited books. There are many editions published of this book into the mid-20th century. It's just a list of books that you're not allowed to own or read. This is from the Inquisition. Yeah. So
we had an exhibit of those books last year at Fordham.
So we have one of these books, which has a cover that looks like this. So it's just a piece of parchment slapped on there, just sewed on, which is actually quite common in Italy and Germany. Very simple bookbinding, and it's a Hebrew. It's a Hebrew text. So on the outside, it's quite easy to identify. It's the text of any Siddur. It's the end of Nishmas Kol Chai, and then Shochenad over here. So for now it could be anything, but on the other side, this is the outside of the book. So this is the inside front covers. On the inside front covers, sadly, they're covered with a piece of paper. So I got these photos, wasn't able to do much with them, but I could already see here in this title, the title in big letters, insipid, Az B'Yom Kippur. Az B'Yom Kippur. Az B'Yom Kippur is the first Yotzer, first piyut, which is recited after Baruch in the morning of Yom Kippur, in the Ashkenazi rite. So I said, oh, this looks like an Ashkenazi Machzor. And this must be the text of the piyut, but I can't read any of that. So when I came to the library in person, I got the volume. So I held it up to the light, and looked through the paper, and voila, things started coming. So then Kyle at the library, so he brought out a light sheet. By putting it on the light sheet, look at like how much it came to life. And so like now all of a sudden the text is all completely legible. So this is something I could work with. So I photographed that, and then the other inside front cover looks like this. Can you see after the on the light table, almost completely legible. You can read all the vowels and everything. So this enabled a deeper analysis. You get the Machzor Goldschmidt. This is a critical edition of the Machzor produced by Daniel Goldschmidt in the 70s. It has an apparatus with all kinds of textual variants. Machzor. Machzor, a siddur is a prayer book. A Machzor has all the special prayers throughout the year that are recited on holidays and even around the holidays. Say like now, last Shabbat was Shabbat Shkalim. And the next Shabbat is called Shabbat Zachor, one of the 4 parshiot around Purim, where we have special Sabbaths with special liturgical editions. So those liturgical editions, piyutim, are found in the Machzor. Today, we're mostly familiar with the Machzor from Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur because we've kept a lot of those editions. Most of the editions from Pesach, Shavuot, Sukkot, and the special Sabbath, most congregations don't recite those extra piyutim today. So those Machzors are more rare. In the medieval period in Ashkenaz and Italy, they were recited by every congregation, each according with their own variants. So this is a Machzor. So this is a Machzor which includes Yom Kippur. So now with the critical edition of Machzor Yom Kippur, which I put here side by side with the manuscript, I was able to narrow things down and say that no, this R here, the resh here, there, which is in the text, which I've bolded, that indicates Rome, the Roman custom. And this is just one that I illustrated, but just on this one fragment, I found 3 that are particular for Rome. So we can settle that the text is a text of the Roman Rite. It was found in far northern Italy, and the script resembles Ashkenaz type, which is very common in Italy. Italy is a sort of meeting ground. You have in the north, you have things that are more Ashkenazi oriented. In the south, you have things that are more Sephardi oriented. So this is from the north. So we're dealing with Italian Rite, Roman Rite, with Ashkenazi flavor. Yeah.
We have 3 volumes of that in our collection here,
Of which?
of the book Machzor Bologna.
Oh, Machzor Bologna. Oh, okay. They have 2 volumes in the New York Public Library. Okay. So yeah, so since I was at the New York Public Library, they have I got the Machzor Bologna is a classic printed edition of this rite. It's not the earliest edition. There's a much earlier edition of this rite actually, but it's very, very rare. But I put it up with the Machzor Bologna, and here you see it. Right, yeah, it has the same textual variant. Ba'om ani yeshena, whereas in all the Ashkenazi rites, it's ba'ani yeshena without the ba'om. Big difference, not just a letter; it's all like a whole word. Okay. Oh, and here we have in a manuscript. Yeah, the same variant. And this Italian handwriting is a little more mainstream Italian, a little more with the Sephardi style, this handwriting, less Ashkenazi than what we've seen. Okay, that is book number 1. Now, this is not paperboard. This is just a piece of parchment, one piece of parchment on the outside of the book. That's why I dealt with it first. Okay, let's move on to the second example. This is a Zohar, the book itself. Now this is a manuscript, and the manuscript is written in Hebrew. It's in the Hebrew collection. And the text is a Zohar commentary. So I'm not going to be dealing much with the Zohar and this, Ein li Esek b'nistarot. But what caught my eye first off was the binding, because the binding is also embossed. Yeah, like the ones here, but it's a different type of embossing, and it just screams out to me that this is early modern bookbinding. It's not medieval. It's not the medieval type, And of course, since the book itself is dated to 1707, everything lines up. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Maybe tell us what the Zohar is.
Yeah. Well, that's also controversial. What the Zohar is the chief. Well, it's a dominant mystical text or series of mystical texts of Kabbalah, and much of it purports to be from the times of the Tanaim, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Many scholars say that it was produced in medieval Spain in the 13th century. Whatever it is, this text had a major impact on the Jewish world. Then the whole Arizal and this school of Kabbalists from Sfat, and then the whole Hasidic movement draw very much upon the Zohar. Okay, so here I'm more interested in the bookbinding. Yeah, the book itself. This is a Hebrew book, so it's funny. I tell you, a lot of times you have no idea how many books over the centuries they've been rebound. Yeah, and the books and the bindings were just thrown away and lost. And I think, oh gosh, if only they threw away the book and they kept the binding, we'd be so much better off. Okay. But I'm not saying this about these Hebrew manuscripts. Maybe the Index Librorum Prohibitum, maybe there we could say something like that, right? Okay. So the binding here, this is what's nice about this binding is like the cardboard. You can just see the pieces of it. It's like falling apart. This thing is really fraying. Look at that. You can see the individual pieces in there, how it's constructed. You can see here the flax cloth, which is in the spine, which I mentioned before. Here it's been dyed a nice color. Here you can see the cloth again in the spine where it's coming apart. You can really see everything in the kishkas of this book. Yeah, I think they understand. No, it's New York, right? Okay, so here's the front. Okay, now there's some manuscripts already in the front. This is all that they sent me, was this view of the inside covers, the front cover. This is all that I'd seen previously, and you can see that there's Hebrew, but it's all garbled. Like the layers, there's one over the other, and they're different directions, and you can only make out a couple words here, a couple words there, but it's enough that you can see that it's a medical manual. But so I want to look. I'm poking around and going inside. I'm not damaging anything. Don't worry. Yeah, this was all done with the librarians at the New York Public Library. But look, inside, you can see so much more. You can see complete lines. And what's inside is preserved so much better than what's on the outside and frayed. Yeah, it's really been preserved in pristine conditions over the centuries. That's something you find a lot in these book bindings. So it's just page after page of it. I sent these pictures to a couple of scholars that deal with Hebrew medieval manuscripts. And so far, I haven't reached an identification yet. It's a field that not a lot of people are involved with, because with medicine, people want up-to-date medicine. Who wants medieval medicine? It's like the history of science. It's the history of the science department. And so you need to know all the languages. Things are translated from Judeo-Arabic and Latin, Hebrew, all these things. And then each doctor creating his manuscripts, he can add things, take things away. So it's a mess. But who knows? But if it's unidentified, it makes it even more interesting, because maybe if we open it up and see more of the pages, complete pages. One of the scholars said, maybe if I could see complete pages, I could see more of the text and get more of an idea of the structure of the book. You'd be surprised at how people can make identifications. Sometimes you can just find the right chapter title and boom, that hooks you up to something. Okay, let's move on. to book number 3. This will be the last book that we'll discuss today. This is a Yemenite prayer book. They call it a Tichlal, the Yemenite prayer book. This is what it looks like. This is Yemen. Yeah, I told you, from Catalonia to Yemen, right? So this is, here we are. We're in Yemen. Now from Catalonia to Yemen, they're doing paperboard is being used because this is all in the Islamic world, where this Islamic type of book with the paperboard is dominant. Okay, so this prayer book has a plain binding. Inside the front covers, we have pages of Chumash, which is a Bible, the Pentateuch, the 5 books of the Bible. It's a bit unusual to find these in bindings which were created by Jews because of the holiness of them. It's actually quite unusual for me. They mention the name of God also. I have to do more research on Yemenite bookbinding. It hasn't been my focus, but I did study the halakha, the legal attitudes towards disposal of manuscripts which are holy, of different degrees of holiness, and how they must be treated. That's an article of mine called "The Jewish Bookbinders of Girona," and there are lenient opinions, but this is apparently even using the name of God, that they viewed it as legitimate. But this does appear to be written on paper, not on parchment, which reduces the holiness, and also it's not a Sefer Torah. It's not suitable for ritual use in the synagogue, for reading in the synagogue on the Sabbath, because it has marks at the end of each verse to mark where that is. So yeah, so it's not the holiest of holies, and it was used. Then something else caught my eye. In the binding, in one of the corners, it's starting to fray. There's a little bit of a hole there. I peeked in there, and I don't know if you can see here from this picture. I can see it from mine. Around here, there's hints of Hebrew writing, that just hints of it. Maybe it doesn't come out so well here, but so here, this is where it is. Does anybody see it? Can anybody see that there's like, even if you can't, this happens a lot, you can't read it, it just looks like there's shapes of Hebrew letters. There could be, and then sometimes I don't know if I'm hallucinating or not, or that, and I have to ask other people. But this I'm reasonably sure is Hebrew text. But by poking even more inside with Mila from the public library, boom, here's some real text. Yeah, real text in there. 2 lines, just a couple words on the top, a couple words on the bottom, some fragments. But this little piece of text here, these few words, is enough to make an identification. Yeah, got lucky. What are we looking at? We're looking at the top line, Rav V'Takif. Rav V'Takif is taken from the Aramaic Targum, the Aramaic translation of the Bible, for the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 9, verse 2. And I should read it in English. Maybe we'll do for the next verse. Then the second line is the Hebrew of the following verse, verse 3. V'yodata hayom ki Hashem Elohecha hu ha'over lefanecha eshochla hu. You should know that the Lord your God passed before you. He could destroy things, eat things like fire, and he will destroy them. The enemy. He's talking about the enemy. To be confident in front of the enemy. Okay. So here we have the Aramaic and the Bible. Now this is something which I've seen before in medieval manuscripts. It's a common thing to read it's not the most common type of Bible, but it is. But especially in Yemen, It's also found in Ashkenaz, in medieval Germany, even, to do a verse of the Bible, a verse of the translation. Now, the reason why this is done, there's a couple of reasons. One is that there's an ancient custom mentioned in the Talmud to read the Aramaic translation after the verse in the synagogue, when the Bible is read in the synagogue. So the Bible is read from the Sefer Torah, and then the Maturgaman, the translator, reads the Aramaic, and they go back and forth, back and forth. In Yemen, in any Yemenite synagogue, they still do this to this day, this practice. And another, also, there's the Talmud also says that it's praiseworthy to read Shnai Mikra v'Echad Targum each week. That's 2 times the Bible, 1 time the translation. That the person, most interpret that should be done at home. That's like individual study that someone should do. So that in order to facilitate these customs, it was very common to include the Aramaic translation in Bibles. Now, something else I noticed in these fragments popped out, which is the vocalization marks. Now, on the top line, you see on top of the resh, there's a line on top, and on top of the vav, there's a line on top. Line here, and here's a line, and here there's 2 dots on the top. Yeah, these. So this is the Babylonian vocalization method. It's also sometimes, some call it the Tam Elyon, that it's on the top, that all of the marks are on the top, yeah, which resembles Arabic vocalization more. And this was common in Yemenite fragments. For scholars of Targum, of the Aramaic translation, the main critical edition produced by Alexander Sperber, he adopted this vocalization method for his edition, and I think they were all written in by hand. So here I pulled in the marks. They're not the exact same type of marks, but these vary a lot in manuscripts, and I'll show you here. This is a facsimile of a Yemenite Bible. That's the facsimile is found in New York Public Library. And it resembles ours more. But what you can see here is, let's start here. You can see this is the vocalization system we're all familiar with. Ko Amar Hashem up to here. Then it switches in the Aramaic translation. The whole vocalization method switches, and it goes back and forth. So each verse. So yeah. Here's another one. Another facsimile in the public library. It's called Keter Torah Shel Mishpachat Chabshush, the Chabshush family Bible. That's what it is. The Chabshush family. Chabshush is a Yemenite name. So this facsimile has a nice micrography, couple of micrography pages. This is art made with miniature letters. It's all miniature Hebrew letters. This is a unique Jewish art. There's it's only found in Hebrew manuscripts, not in Latin and not in Arabic, and also it follows the same in the prophets. It follows the same pattern of alternating cantillations. Now, why would this happen? Why would one manuscript use different vocalization systems, switching back and forth? Why would this happen? This is a bit of a mystery. I had to ask around about this, but it seems like there's a quite clear explanation. Okay, so the explanation is as follows. The Yemenites originally, has anyone here ever heard Yemenite pronunciation of Hebrew? Yeah, in Torah reading, you've heard of that? It's like you heard. It's like something. It's a completely different. Like what's going? It's so. It's like there's so much variation of it. So the reason is that their original tradition of their vocalization follows the Babylonian system rather than the Tiberian system. The Tiberia is from the land of Israel, Tiberias. And their system has only 6 vowels, whereas opposed to the Tiberian system has 7 vowels. So they followed, that was their original tradition, and their old Bibles are also written in that system until came Maimonides. Maimonides in the late 12th century. So Maimonides was faced with a problem. There were a lot of different manuscripts of the Bible, and there were all kinds of variants between them. Yeah, and so how do you decide? You know, which one's right? How do you say which one's right, which one's wrong? How do you make these decisions? The early sages said try to follow the majority. Yeah, but it's not so simple. So Maimonides said, we're gonna go with the Ben Asher manuscript of the Bible. That is the authoritative one. He said that's the one we're gonna go with. Now the Ben Asher manuscript, it's also called the Aleppo Codex. It's a very famous manuscript which was in Syria for many years. And today, most of it is extant, not all of it. Today it's found in the Israel Museum in Jerusalem. The same one. That's the one that Maimonides looked at. They decided that's the one. And that is with the Tiberian system, the system that we're familiar with. Yeah, and the Tiberian system overwhelmed the Babylonian system. But the Yemenites were still following the Babylonian system and stuck with it. But then when the Maimonides came along, the Yemenites considered Maimonides their supreme rabbinic authority. Even afterwards, after the Shulchan Aruch came, many Yemenites did not accept it. They continued to follow Maimonides to this day, many of them. So the opinion of Maimonides to follow the Ben Asher Bible began to pick up steam and be adopted more and more. But he only spoke about the Bible. Maimonides spoke about it. He didn't say anything about the Aramaic translation. So they kept their traditions with the Aramaic translation, with their vocalization system, and they began to switch the text of the Bible to the Tiberian system. So this took place from the time of Maimonides until the last exemplars we have, which still use the Babylonian system, are till about the 1700s. This period. So this makes it medieval. It makes it fully medieval. Now today, if you go to a bookstore and ask for a Yemenite Bible, and there's a lot of them. They make a lot of these things, like not this, but they make a lot of them today, but everything is going to be Tiberian system, the one we're familiar with. Okay, so this one, Chabshush, this is 500 years old, by the way. This one, so it fits right into that period. By the way, I'll add, I live in Jerusalem, and my son, who goes to Talmud Torah school, he has a friend who is Chabshush, friend from the family, the Chabshush family that he plays with, comes to our house, and I asked him, and it's the same. They don't own the manuscript, but it's the same family. It's the same Chabshush family. Okay. Then, so I mentioned Shadal. We looked at all these 3 different types, and Shadal talked about them all. And that's it. Yeah, that's all for.